The chair screeched across the concrete patio, hurled by a leather-clad arm toward the little girl in the wheelchair. Time seemed to slow as cafe patrons watched in horror, their morning coffees forgotten in their hands. The German Shepherd moved like liquid lightning, positioning his muscular body between the flying furniture and the paralyzed child, his teeth bared in a silent warning that made even grown men step back. The biker Marcus stood with his feet planted wide, a smirk playing at the corner of his mouth that didn't quite reach his eyes. Eyes that held something darker, something broken. "What's the matter?" He taunted, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent patio. "It's just a joke." But as the massive dog's growl rumbled like distant thunder, no one was laughing. And no one, least of all Marcus, realized that in that moment, three lives connected by tragedy were about to collide in ways that would change them forever. The service vest on the dog's back told a story Marcus couldn't yet read, and the little girl's clear blue eyes held no fear, only a puzzling recognition, as if she'd been waiting for him all along. Lily Bennett had once been a whirlwind of energy, the kind of child who'd never walk when she could run, never speak when she could sing. That was before the rainy Tuesday evening when a drunk driver swerved across the center line on Highway 16, taking her parents' lives and her ability to walk in one catastrophic moment. At 6 years old, Lily now navigated the world from a pediatric wheelchair, her small hands already calloused from pushing the wheels, her golden hair often twisted into practical braids by her Aunt Claire, who had become her legal guardian after the accident. What Lily had lost in mobility, she gained in perspective. The nurses at Glendale Memorial often whispered that she had old eyes too, knowing too accepting for a child who'd suffered such profound loss. Still, flashes of childish joy would break through when Titan, her German Shepherd service dog, was nearby. He'd been her father's last gift to her, arranged before his death through connections at the K9 unit, where Michael Bennett had served as a police officer. Titan's background made him uniquely qualified for his role in Lily's life. Before becoming her service dog, he'd served 3 distinguished years in the Glendale Police Department's K9 unit, specializing in search and rescue operations. His training had been so exemplary that he'd received special commendation when he'd located 2 children trapped beneath rubble after a gas explosion. Titan's transition to service work had been seamless, trading the intensity of police work for the constant vigilance required to assist Lily. The specialized harness he wore allowed Lily to steady herself during transfers, while his imposing presence deterred the unwanted attention her wheelchair sometimes attracted. Titan was more than Lily's assistant. He was her guardian confidant and bridge to independence. Marcus Reeves hadn't always been the kind of man who'd intimidate a child. Before his 3 tours in Afghanistan, he'd been known for his easy laugh and steady hands. Hands that had trained military dogs with patience few handlers possessed. But war had hollowed him out, replacing calm confidence with jagged anxiety and unpredictable rage. The memories haunted him, the explosion, the frantic barking of his K9 partner trying to alert him, the sacrifice of his best friend Michael who'd pushed him clear of the blast. Marcus's return to civilian life had been a series of failures. Jobs lost to sudden angry outbursts, relationships fractured by his nightmares, self-medication with whatever would quiet his mind. The leather jacket and motorcycle had become his armor against a world that no longer made sense. The rumble of the engine drowning out the persistent ringing in his ears. The morning had dawned picture-perfect over Glendale, with a kind of clear blue sky that seemed to promise nothing but good things. At Rosewood Cafe, the outdoor patio had filled early, with the usual mix of professionals grabbing coffee before work, retirees lingering over breakfast, and locals who treated the cafe as their second office. The corner table, slightly removed from the busiest section, had become something of an unofficial reservation for Lily and her Aunt Claire. The staff had grown accustomed to the little girl's wheelchair needing extra space, and the manager, Elaine, always made sure the table was available for their Tuesday morning visits. Lily sat with her back straight in her wheelchair, her legs covered with a light blanket despite the warmth of the day, a concession to circulation issues that Claire insisted upon, Titan lay in a perfect downstay position beside her, his alert eyes continuously scanning the patio with professional vigilance. On the table sat Lily's chocolate milk, Claire's black coffee, and a shared plate of blueberry scones that Lily methodically broke into bite-sized pieces. "Remember your exercises this afternoon?" Claire was saying, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose as she reviewed the day's schedule in her worn planner. "Dr. Weston says you're making excellent progress with your upper body strength." Lily nodded, though her attention had drifted to a monarch butterfly landing briefly on a nearby flowering bush. "Aunt Claire, do butterflies remember being caterpillars?" She asked her question, reflecting the characteristic way her mind wandered between practical matters and philosophical wanderings. Claire smiled, accustomed to these sudden shifts. "That's a good question for your science teacher, sweetheart." She checked her watch and frowned slightly. "I need to stop by the pharmacy before your appointment. Your new medication came in yesterday." Lily's face fell slightly. The new medication was supposed to help with the pain that sometimes shot through her legs. Phantom sensations from nerves that refused to accept. They no longer commanded movement. "Can't we skip it today? I don't like how it makes my head fuzzy. We'll talk to Dr. Weston about adjusting the dose." Claire promised, gathering her purse. "I'll be back in 15 minutes, 20 at most. Elaine knows I'm stepping out, and Titan is right here." She hesitated, her caregiver's instinct warring with the knowledge that Lily needed moments of independence. "You'll be okay." Lily nodded solemnly. "Titan and I will be fine. We'll practice our waiting skills." She patted the dog's head, and his tail thumped once against the concrete in acknowledgement. Claire leaned down to kiss Lily's forehead, her hand automatically checking that the medical alert button was secure around Lily's neck. "I'll be quick as lightning." As Claire's sensible shoes clicked away across the patio, Lily turned her attention to her chocolate milk, using both hands to steady the plastic cup as she'd been taught in occupational therapy. Titan remained vigilant beside her, his body relaxed but ready. Several patrons nodded or smiled at Lily. She'd become something of a fixture at the cafe, her quiet dignity and occasional bright laughter, a reminder of resilience that many found inspiring. The peaceful morning rhythm continued for another 10 minutes. Lily had just opened her favorite book, a dog-eared copy of Charlotte's Web that had belonged to her mother, when the distinctive rumble of motorcycle engines disrupted the quiet cafe's ambient chatter. 3 bikes pulled up to the curb just beyond the patio's decorative iron fence, their engines cutting off in quick succession. The riders dismounted with the practiced ease of men who lived on their machines. The leader, taller than the others and broad through the shoulders, removed his helmet to reveal close-cropped hair with premature gray at the temples. The leather vest he wore over a faded t-shirt bore no motorcycle club insignia, but the military boots and the way he surveyed his surroundings spoke of someone accustomed to assessing threats. Titan's ears pricked forward, his body tensing slightly, though he maintained his downstay. Lily noticed the change immediately. She and Titan had developed the kind of wordless communication that comes from constant companionship. "It's okay, boy," she whispered, though something in the air had changed, a tension that even her young mind could perceive. The 3 men entered the patio area, the leader walking slightly ahead with a rolling gait. A server approached them with menus, but the leader, Marcus, waved her off with a brusque, "Just coffee black for all of us." His voice carried across the patio, slightly too loud, as if he'd forgotten how to modulate it for civilian spaces. As the men settled at a table near the entrance, their presence seemed to expand beyond their physical space. Conversations at nearby tables grew quieter, more guarded. Marcus's restless gaze swept across the patio, briefly settling on Lily and Titan before moving on. But seconds later, his eyes snapped back, focusing more intently on the German Shepherd. "That's a nice-looking dog," he commented to his companions, though his voice projected enough for Lily to hear. The youngest of the 3 men, who'd introduced himself to the server as Ray, shrugged. "Just some kid's pet." Marcus's laugh held an edge. "That's no pet. Look at how he's positioned, how he's watching everything." He tapped his fingers on the table in a staccato rhythm. "Military trained, I'd bet money on it." Lily, overhearing this, felt a small flush of pride. People often complimented Titan, but few recognized the extent of his training. She glanced at the cafe entrance, hoping to see Aunt Claire returning, but the doorway remained empty. The server delivered 3 mugs of coffee to the men's table. As she walked away, Marcus rose, suddenly causing Titan to shift to high alert, though the dog remained in position. "I'm going to check out that dog," Marcus announced, ignoring the way his friends rolled their eyes. "Leave it, Reeves," the third man said. "Just drink your coffee." But Marcus was already moving across the patio with deliberate steps. Several patrons watched warily, unsure of his intentions. As he approached Lily's table, Titan's body tensed further, though no sound came from him. Lily looked up at the tall man now standing beside her table, her small face composed despite the flutter of anxiety in her chest. "Good morning, sir," she said politely, as Claire had taught her to address adults. Marcus seemed momentarily taken aback by her formality. "Morning, kid." His eyes remained on Titan. "That's some dog you've got there. German Shepherd, purebred from the look of him." "Yes, sir. His name is Titan," Lily replied, her hand instinctively moving to rest on Titan's head, both for her comfort and as a silent command to the dog. "Titan, huh?" Marcus squatted down to the dog's eye level, a move that made Titan's ears flatten slightly. "You're a working dog, aren't you, boy?" He reached out a hand toward Titan's snout. "Please don't touch him without asking," Lily said quickly. "He's on duty." "On duty?" Marcus's hand paused in midair. His eyes took in the service vest he'd somehow missed before then, traveled to Lily's wheelchair, understanding dawning slowly on his face. "Oh, right." But instead of withdrawing, he left his hand extended inches from Titan's nose. "I've handled dogs like him before. They know me." From across the patio, one of Marcus's friends called out, "Come on, man, leave the kid alone." But Marcus seemed transfixed by Titan, by the dog's controlled alertness and the intelligent assessment in his eyes. Something about the animal had triggered a cascade of memories, of desert sand and night patrols, of the comforting weight of a K9 partner against his side in the darkness. "Ex-military?" he asked, though it wasn't really a question. Lily shook her head. "Police, he worked with my daddy." At the word daddy, a shadow crossed Marcus's face, a tightening around his eyes that Lily couldn't interpret. The cafe had grown unusually quiet, the other patrons sensing the strange tension building between the man, the child, and the dog that watched him with unwavering attention. Titan remained perfectly still, but Lily could feel the coiled readiness in his body, the slight tremor of restraint beneath her small hand. She glanced again toward the cafe entrance, hoping for Aunt Claire's return. The big clock on the cafe wall showed that 12 minutes had passed, not long in adult time, but an eternity in the stretched moment of uncomfortable encounter. "Your daddy a cop, then?" Marcus asked, his voice rougher. "He was," Lily said simply, the past tense heavy with meaning. Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or the ghost of memory. He straightened up, suddenly looming over the table. "Good dog you've got," he repeated, though the words seemed automatic now. He took a step back, then another, before turning abruptly to rejoin his friends. As he walked away, Lily released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Titan remained vigilant, his eyes tracking Marcus's movement across the patio. The normal murmur of cafe conversation slowly resumed, though several patrons continued to cast concerned glances toward Lily's table. But the encounter wasn't over. As Marcus settled back with his friends, their conversation grew animated, punctuated by occasional laughter that seemed too loud, too forced. Lily tried to return to her book, but found herself reading the same sentence repeatedly. Her attention divided between the page and the uncomfortable awareness of being watched. Titan knew it too. His body remained tense, his attention fixed on the 3 men whose presence had disrupted the peaceful morning routine. And somehow Lily sensed with a child's intuition that the seemingly casual encounter had been merely the opening move in a confrontation yet to fully unfold. Marcus returned to his friends with a strange expression. Something between intrigue and discomfort etched across his weathered features. He took a long swig of his coffee, grimacing at the bitter taste. "That dog's got police training," he muttered loud enough for his companions to hear, but keeping his voice low enough to avoid carrying across the patio. Not just any service dog. Ray, the youngest of the three with a patchy beard that failed to hide his youth, glanced over at Lily's table. "So what are you going to start, a fan club?" His attempt at humor fell flat as Marcus's expression darkened. "I worked with dogs like that," Marcus said, his fingers drumming against the table in that persistent rhythm that always appeared when his thoughts turned toward his time in service. "Belgian Malinois in Afghanistan. Same training principles. That dog's watching me like he knows something." The third man, Vince, a former Army mechanic who'd served alongside Marcus in their second tour, shook his head. "It's just a dog, Reeves, and you're making the kid uncomfortable. Let it go." But Marcus couldn't let it go. Something about the German Shepherd had triggered a flood of memories. The disciplined, alert posture, the intelligent assessment in the animal's eyes. Those eyes had followed him across the patio, watchful in a way that reminded him too much of Axel, his canine partner, who'd saved his unit twice before the IED that no dog could have detected in time. Marcus rose again, ignoring Vince's muttered curse. "I'm just going to see what he does." He moved with deliberate steps back toward Lily's table, aware that several patrons were watching him with undisguised concern. The weight of their gazes prickled along his skin, triggering the hypervigilance that never fully subsided. Titan's reaction was immediate but controlled. The dog shifted position, rising into a perfect sit beside Lily's wheelchair, his body now squarely between the approaching man and the child. No growl, no bark, just a precise, professional repositioning that spoke volumes about his training. "See that?" Marcus said loudly enough that his friends could hear. "That's defensive positioning, perfect execution." He stopped about 5 feet from the table, respecting the invisible boundary that Titan had established. "Your dog ever been deployed overseas, kid? Russ." Lily shook her head, her small fingers now resting lightly on Titan's shoulder. "No, Sir. Titan worked for the Glendale Police Department in search and rescue." Her voice remained steady, polite, though awareness had crept into her blue eyes. Marcus cocked his head, studying Titan with an intensity that made several nearby patrons shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Search and rescue, huh? Found any good missing persons lately?" His tone had shifted, taking on a challenging edge. "He's retired now," Lily replied, "except for helping me." She gestured toward her wheelchair, a simple movement that carried the weight of explanation. Marcus's eyes lingered on the wheelchair, then moved back to Titan. "Let's see how good his training really is." Without warning, he clapped his hands sharply, the sound cracking across the patio like a gunshot. Coffee cups rattled as startled patrons jumped a woman at the next table, gasping audibly. But Titan didn't flinch, didn't bark. His ears flattened momentarily, his muscles tensed, but he remained in perfect position, his eyes locked on Marcus with unwavering focus. "Marcus, enough!" Vince called from their table, half rising from his chair. "Leave the kid and her dog alone." But Marcus had found a target for the restless energy that constantly churned inside him, the need to provoke a reaction, to test boundaries until they broke. "Good boy," Marcus said to Titan, his voice holding a mocking edge. "Real steady. But what happens if I do this?" He took a sudden step toward Lily. Titan's response was immediate. A low rumbling growl that vibrated from deep in his chest, a warning as clear as spoken language. The dog didn't move from his position, didn't show teeth, but the message was unmistakable. "Stop it," Lily said, her voice smaller now but still composed. "You're scaring everyone." Marcus glanced around, suddenly aware of the tension that had spread across the patio. Several patrons had pulled out their phones, some openly filming, others with fingers poised over emergency contacts. The server who'd brought their coffee stood frozen near the entrance, looking uncertainly toward the manager's office. For a moment, something like shame flickered across Marcus's face. He took a step back, raising his hand slightly. "Just testing his training?" He said, the excuse sounding hollow even to his own ears. "No harm meant." "Titan is very well trained," Lily said, her hand still resting on the dog's shoulder. "My daddy made sure of that before before he went to heaven. Her composure wavered slightly on the last words, a child's grief momentarily visible beneath her careful poise. Something in Marcus's expression shifted at the mention of Lily's father. A muscle twitched in his jaw, his fingers curling into fists at his sides. "Your dad taught him well," he said, his voice rougher. He turned abruptly, stalking back to his companions with rigid shoulders. "Happy now?" Vince asked as Marcus dropped heavily into his chair. "You just harassed a disabled kid. Real heroic, Reeves." Ray laughed nervously. The dog didn't even flinch, military grade for sure. Marcus's gaze remained fixed on Lily, and Titan, something troubled and distant in his eyes. "That kid said her dad's dead." Vince shrugged. "Lots of cops die in the line of duty. Doesn't make it your business. Something about them." Marcus trailed off his thoughts, whirling in directions he couldn't fully articulate. The coffee in his mug had grown cold, but he drank it anyway, grimacing at the bitter taste. The ringing in his ears had intensified, a constant companion since the explosion, but worse now with the adrenaline coursing through his system. Across the patio, Lily had returned to her book, or at least was making a show of reading it. Titan remained vigilant, his attention divided between his charge and the three men whose presence had disrupted their morning routine. "We should go," Vince said, checking his watch. "Got that appointment at the VA at 11. But Marcus wasn't ready to leave. Something unfinished pulled at him, a compulsion he couldn't name. He watched as Lily turned a page in her book, her movements careful and precise. There was something about her that nagged at his memory, something he couldn't quite place. "One more test," he said, suddenly pushing his chair back. Vince grabbed his arm. "Marcus, no, we're leaving now." Marcus shook him off with a sharp movement. "Just one more. I need to see something." He strode across the patio before his friends could stop him, ignoring the murmurs that followed his approach. Titan was on his feet the moment Marcus moved once again, positioning himself between the approaching man and Lily. This time, the dog's hackles were slightly raised, his stance wider and more defensive. "Sir, please go back to your table." Lily said, her voice steady despite the tension evident in her small frame. "Titan doesn't like people approaching fast." Marcus stopped, but closer this time, just beyond arm's reach. "Smart dog," he said, his eyes fixed on Titan rather than Lily. "Knows when someone's a threat." He shifted his weight slightly, a testing movement. Titan's growl deepened the sound, carrying across the now silent patio. Several patrons stood unsure whether to intervene, while others moved further away from the developing confrontation. "I'm not a threat," Marcus said, though his body language communicated otherwise. "Just curious about how good he really is." Without warning, he reached toward Lily's book. Titan's reaction was immediate and calculated. He moved forward just enough to block Marcus's hand, teeth still concealed, but stance now unmistakably protective. The growl hadn't stopped, a continuous warning that made the hair on the back of Marcus's neck stand up. "See," Marcus said, pulling his hand back. "A perfect threat assessment. Your dad trained him to protect you specifically, didn't he?" Lily nodded slowly. "Titan keeps me safe." Her voice trembled slightly, now the first real indication that the confrontation had begun to pierce her carefully maintained composure. From across the patio, Ray called out, "Come on, Marcus, let it go, man." But Marcus was locked in now, a confrontation of wills with the German Shepherd, whose disciplined response both impressed and provoked him. "Let's see what happens if I do this," he said, and before anyone could react, he moved to touch Lily's wheelchair. Titan's warning growl escalated instantly into a sharp, authoritative bark that froze Marcus in his tracks. The dog still hadn't moved from his defensive position, hadn't attempted to bite, but the message was clear. This was the final warning. A woman at a nearby table stood up forcefully, her chair scraping against the concrete. "That's enough," she called out, her voice cutting through the tension. "Leave that child alone right now." Marcus turned toward the woman, irritation flashing across his face. "Mind your own business, lady. I'm not hurting anyone." "You're harassing a disabled child," the woman replied, stepping forward. "And I've already called the manager." As if on cue, the cafe manager emerged from inside, a middle-aged woman with a determined expression. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, though her eyes made it clear she already knew the answer. Marcus stepped back from Lily's table, his hands raising slightly in a gesture that was half surrender, half dismissal. No problem, just admiring the dog's training. He was scaring Lily, another patron interjected, and menacing her since her aunt left. The manager's expression hardened. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you and your friends to leave. We don't tolerate harassment of any kind at Rosewood. Marcus's face darkened, a flush creeping up his neck. Harassment? I was just talking to the kid, Kuti. You were testing my dog, Lily said quietly, and then making him nervous. Please stop. Her simple request, delivered without accusation, but with undeniable clarity, seemed to land differently than the manager's demand. Marcus looked at Lily, really looked at her for the first time, and for a brief moment, something like recognition flickered in his eyes. Fine, he said abruptly. We're going. He turned and strode back to his companions, who were already standing clearly eager to leave the tense situation. As they collected their helmets, Ray muttered, "What the hell was that about Reeves?" Marcus didn't answer. His gaze had returned to Lily and Titan, a troubled frown creasing his forehead. As the three men made their way out of the patio area, several patrons visibly relaxed, the collective tension beginning to dissipate. But just as they reached the exit, Marcus paused, turning back to look at Lily one more time. "Hey, kid," he called across the patio. "What's your last name?" The question hung in the air, unexpected and somehow ominous. Lily hesitated, years of stranger danger warnings warring with her inherent politeness. "That's not appropriate." The manager stated firmly, "Please leave now." Marcus stood motionless for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, without another word, he turned and followed his friends out of the cafe. The rumble of motorcycle engines soon signaled their departure. In the aftermath of their exit, the patio remained unusually quiet. Several patrons approached Lily's table, offering reassuring words and concerned questions about her well-being. Titan gradually relaxed his defensive posture, though his attention remained focused on the cafe entrance, as if expecting Marcus's return. And Lily, her book forgotten in her lap, sat watching the empty doorway with a thoughtful expression that seemed too old for her young face. Something had shifted in the morning's peaceful routine, a confrontation that felt unfinished, a connection not yet fully revealed. As Titan settled back beside her wheelchair, his warm presence reassuring against her leg, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that the strange man with the troubled eyes would return. The patio of Rosewood Cafe had barely settled back into its normal rhythm when the distinctive sound of Claire's sensible heels clicked across the concrete. She hurried toward Lily's table, a small white pharmacy bag clutched in one hand. Her normally composed expression creased with concern. Several patrons watched her approach, exchanging meaningful glances. The Guardian had returned, but too late to prevent the unsettling confrontation. "I'm so sorry I took longer than expected," Claire said, slightly breathless as she placed the medication bag on the table. "The pharmacist needed to review the dosage instructions with..." She stopped mid-sentence, registering the unusual atmosphere and Titan's still alert posture. "What happened? Is everything all right?" Before Lily could answer, the cafe manager approached, coffee pot in hand, but clearly using it as an excuse to check on the situation. "There was a bit of an incident," she explained in a low voice to Claire. "Three men on motorcycles came in, and one of them took an unusual interest in Lily's dog. He became somewhat aggressive in testing the dog's responses. We asked them to leave." Claire's face paled, her hand instinctively reaching for Lily's shoulder. "Are you okay, sweetheart? Did that man frighten you?" Lily shook her head slightly, though the small furrow between her brows belied her calm answer. "Titan protected me. He didn't let the man get too close." She hesitated, then added with childish honesty, "But it was scary when he got loud." The manager refilled Claire's coffee cup, her movements deliberate, as she added, "Several customers were concerned enough to record the interaction on their phones. We have their contact information if you want to follow up." Claire's expression tightened, the protective fierceness that had become her default since taking guardianship of Lily, emerging fully. "I would appreciate those contacts, and I'd like to know if those men are regular customers." "First time I've seen them," the manager replied, "and hopefully the last given their behavior." She offered a reassuring smile to Lily before moving to attend to other tables. Claire sat down heavily in her chair, her hand trembling slightly as she reached for her coffee. The constant vigilance required to protect a vulnerable child in a world that sometimes seemed designed for the able-bodied and strong had worn her down over the past year, etching new lines around her eyes and mouth. "Maybe we should go straight to your appointment," she suggested, though Lily had barely touched her scone. "Can we stay?" Lily asked, her small voice steady. "Titan needs to settle after being on alert. Dr. Harrison says it's important for his training that he can return to normal after a stressful situation." Claire hesitated, torn between the desire to remove Lily from a place where she'd been harassed and the importance of maintaining routines. "All right," she conceded, "but we'll leave in 20 minutes. As they sat in uneasy calm, several patrons stopped by their table, some to express concern, others to praise Titan's composed behavior, and a few to share their own stories of service dogs that had proven invaluable companions. A retired gentleman who introduced himself as a former canine handler particularly commended Titan's restraint. "That's professional grade training," he observed, nodding appreciatively toward the German Shepherd, who had finally relaxed into a downstay position. "Most dogs would have escalated much faster with that kind of provocation. Your dog kept a perfect threat assessment without overreacting." Lily nodded, a small flicker of pride breaking through her lingering unease. "My daddy said Titan was the best in his class. That's why he chose him for me." The man smiled kindly. "Your daddy chose well." When they finally left the cafe, Claire was hyper-aware of their surroundings, scanning the street and parking lot with nervous attention. The white pharmacy bag with Lily's medication was tucked into the backpack hanging from her wheelchair, and Titan walked perfectly positioned on Lily's left side. His training once again impeccable now that the perceived threat had passed. The remainder of the day proceeded with a structured routine that had become essential to Lily's recovery and ongoing care: physical therapy at the rehabilitation center, a brief session with the child psychologist who had been helping her process her grief, and finally a stop at the park where Titan was allowed some off-duty time to run in the enclosed dog area. But throughout these familiar activities, Claire could sense a lingering tension in both Lily and Titan. The child was quieter than usual, her normally inquisitive mind seemingly turned inward on thoughts she didn't share. And Titan, though responding perfectly to all commands, maintained a heightened awareness that the other service dog handlers at the rehabilitation center noticed immediately. "Rough day?" asked Ellie, whose golden retriever service dog assisted with her multiple sclerosis. She and Claire often exchanged the knowing glances of those navigating disability challenges while Lily worked with her therapists. "Some motorcycle enthusiasts decided to test Titan's training at the cafe this morning," Claire replied, keeping her voice low. "Apparently one found it amusing to see how a service dog would react to increasingly threatening behavior." Ellie's expression darkened. "Unfortunately, not uncommon. Some people can't seem to understand that service dogs are working, not performing." She hesitated, then added, "Was Lily frightened?" Claire watched through the glass partition as Lily worked on strengthening exercises, her physical therapist offering encouragement as she used adapted equipment. She says she wasn't, but she trailed off the worry she'd been suppressing all day, rising to the surface. "It's hard to tell with Lily sometimes, just since the accident she's become so contained. The psychologist says it's a control mechanism. When you've lost so much control over your body and circumstances, you tightly manage what you can, including emotional expression." Ellie nodded in understanding. "Self-protection takes many forms." That evening, as Claire helped Lily with her bedtime routine, the careful transfers from wheelchair to bathroom to bed that had become second nature over the past year, she noticed that Lily seemed lost in thought, responding to questions with uncharacteristic brevity. "Are you thinking about what happened at the cafe today?" Claire finally asked directly as she helped Lily into her pajamas, the nightly ritual of managing leg braces and catheter care, requiring both physical assistance and delicate preservation of a growing child's dignity. Lily nodded, her fingers absently stroking Titan, who lay beside the bed, always within reach. "He wasn't a bad man," she said after a long moment. "The one who was testing Titan." Claire's hand stilled in the act of arranging Lily's pillows. "He behaved very inappropriately. Lily, good people don't frighten children or harass service dogs." He had sad eyes. Lily continued as if Claire hadn't spoken. "Like in the pictures of Daddy when he came back from overseas the first time before he got better." The observation struck Claire with unexpected force. Michael had indeed struggled after his first deployment. The haunted look in his eyes, the startling response to loud noises, the nights when sleep proved elusive. But he'd sought help, had worked through the worst of it before returning for his second tour, before meeting and falling in love with Lily's mother, before creating the family that had been shattered on that rainy highway. "Some people have seen difficult things," Claire acknowledged carefully. "But that doesn't excuse frightening behavior." Titan knew he was sad too. Lily said with the certainty children sometimes possess, "That's why he didn't bite him. Titan only bites bad people, not sad people." Claire had no response to this childish wisdom. Instead, she finished tucking Lily in, made sure her medication and water were within reach on the bedside table, and ensured the monitor was turned on so Lily could call her during the night if needed. "Sleep well, sweetheart," she said, kissing Lily's forehead. "Titan is right here, and I'm just down the hall." As she turned out the light, leaving only the small nightlight glowing in the corner, Claire heard Lily's small voice once more. "I think he's going to come back." The words sent a chill down Claire's spine. But when she turned to ask what Lily meant, the child had already closed her eyes, her breathing beginning to deepen towards sleep. Claire stood in the doorway a moment longer, watching the gentle rise and fall of Lily's chest, the faithful shadow of Titan beside the bed. The day's events had left her uneasy in a way she couldn't fully articulate. Not just the confrontation itself, but Lily's peculiar reaction to it. For a child who had endured so much trauma, Lily displayed an uncanny ability to read people, to sense the pain beneath hostile behavior. Michael had been the same way. The following morning brought an unexpected development. As Claire prepared breakfast, carefully cutting Lily's toast into manageable pieces and measuring out her morning medications, the house phone rang. Few people called the landline. Claire had maintained it primarily for emergency purposes, concerned that cell service might be unreliable in a crisis. "Bennett residence," she answered, balancing the phone between shoulder and ear as she continued preparing Lily's breakfast tray. "Mrs. Bennett," the voice was male, professionally neutral. "This is Officer Daniels from the Glendale Police Department. I'm calling about an incident report filed yesterday by the manager of Rosewood Cafe." Claire's hand stilled. "Yes, I'm aware of the incident. My niece was the child involved. We'd like you and your niece to come to the station to give a statement." The officer continued. "We take harassment of disabled individuals very seriously, and several witnesses provided us with video evidence of the encounter." "I see," Claire said, glancing toward the hallway where Lily was still sleeping. "May I ask what prompted this follow-up? Did those men cause problems elsewhere?" There was a slight hesitation on the line. "One of the individuals involved in the incident came to the station late yesterday evening. He appeared disturbed by his own behavior and provided information that suggests this wasn't a random incident. Given the circumstances and the department's connection to your family, Captain Brooks would like to speak with you directly." Claire's grip tightened on the phone. "Connection to my family. Your brother was Michael Bennett, correct, one of our officers who passed away last year?" "Yes," Claire confirmed, a creeping unease spreading through her chest. "What does Michael have to do with what happened at the cafe?" "I believe Captain Brooks would prefer to discuss that in person." Officer Daniels replied, "Would 10:00 this morning be convenient? We'll make sure the interview room is wheelchair accessible for your niece." After confirming the appointment and ending the call, Claire stood motionless in the kitchen, breakfast preparations forgotten. The police department wanted to talk to her about Michael's connection to the incident, and one of the men, presumably the one who had harassed Lily and Titan, had turned himself in, apparently troubled by his own actions. "Aunt Claire," Lily's voice called from her bedroom, "Titan needs to go outside." The familiar routine of the morning reasserted itself, helping Lily with toileting and dressing the careful morning stretches prescribed by her physical therapist. Titan's brief outdoor break supervised by Claire while Lily did her exercises in bed. But beneath the structured normalcy, Claire's mind raced with questions. What connection could possibly exist between her late brother and the aggressive stranger at the cafe? As she helped Lily into her wheelchair, making sure her legs were properly positioned and the safety belt secured, Claire debated how much to tell her about the police department's call. Lily had been through so much. The last thing she needed was more uncertainty or stress, but she was also remarkably perceptive, often sensing when adults were withholding information. "We need to go to the police station this morning," Claire finally said as she placed Lily's breakfast tray across her wheelchair arms. "The police want to talk to us about what happened at the cafe yesterday." Lily nodded, seemingly unsurprised. "Because of the man who was testing Titan?" "Ah, yes," Claire confirmed, watching Lily's face carefully. "The police said one of the men went to the station last night. He was upset about how he behaved." A small frown creased Lily's forehead. "The sad one with the loud voice?" "I believe so," Claire said, struck again by Lily's characterization of the man as sad rather than scary or mean, the descriptions one might expect from a child who had been harassed. Lily was quiet for a moment, methodically cutting her toast into even smaller pieces than Claire had prepared. When she spoke again, her voice was soft but clear. "Is it because he knew my daddy?" The question landed like a physical shock, stopping Claire in her tracks as she was pouring orange juice. She set the pitcher down carefully, turning to face Lily fully. "Why would you think that?" Lily shrugged, a small movement, limited by her decreased upper body strength. "The way he looked at Titan, and he asked me my last name before they left. I think he recognized Titan from somewhere." Claire kneeled beside the wheelchair, bringing herself to eye level with Lily. "Sweetheart, did that man say something to you about your father? Something I didn't hear?" Lily shook her head. "No, but his eyes changed when I said Titan worked with Daddy. And when I said Daddy was in heaven." She took a small bite of toast, chewing thoughtfully, before adding, "I think he's the one who's coming back." The Glendale Police Department building stood as a monument to practical municipal architecture. All straight lines and functional design, softened only by the American flag that fluttered above the entrance. Claire guided Lily's wheelchair up the gently sloping ramp, Titan walking in perfect heel position beside them. Despite having visited many times when Michael was alive, Claire felt a flutter of anxiety as they approached the glass doors. This wasn't a social call or a family visit. This was about yesterday's disturbing encounter. Officer Daniels met them in the lobby, a stocky man with a closely trimmed beard and kind eyes that crinkled when he kneeled to greet Lily at eye level. "You must be Lily," he said warmly. "I knew your dad. He talked about you all the time." Lily nodded solemnly. "This is Titan," she said, gesturing to the German Shepherd, who remained in perfect position despite the distractions of the busy station. "I know Titan too," Officer Daniels replied with a respectful nod toward the dog. "Best search and rescue dog we ever had." He straightened, addressing Claire. "Captain Brooks is waiting for you in the community room. We thought it would be more comfortable than an interview room." Claire appreciated the consideration. Standard interview rooms were hardly designed for accessibility or comfort. She followed Officer Daniels through the security checkpoint, where Titan was acknowledged with professional courtesy by the K-9 officers on duty, their police dogs maintaining disciplined postures, even as their eyes tracked their former colleague. The community room was located on the first floor, a large space used for public meetings and departmental gatherings. As Officer Daniels opened the door, Claire's steps faltered. Seated at the table across from Captain Brooks was a familiar figure, the man from the cafe, still in his leather jacket, but looking markedly different from the aggressive presence that had disturbed their morning routine. His shoulders were hunched, his hands clasped tightly on the table before him, and his eyes, when they lifted to meet Claire's startled gaze, were bloodshot and wary. "Mrs. Bennett Lily," Captain Brooks said, rising from his seat, "thank you for coming in. I believe you've encountered Mr. Reeves before, though under unfortunate circumstances. Marcus Reeves stood awkwardly, his posture stiff with apparent discomfort. I am, he said with a slight nod toward Claire, his voice rougher and quieter than she remembered from the cafe. His gaze shifted to Lily, then immediately to Titan, whose ears had perked forward in recognition. Claire instinctively moved to position herself between Marcus and Lily's wheelchair. Captain, I wasn't aware this would be a confrontation. I don't think Lily needs to. It's not a confrontation. Captain Brooks interrupted gently. Mr. Reeves came to us voluntarily last night. There are some circumstances you should be aware of. He gestured toward the chairs arranged around the table. Please have a seat. Mr. Reeves has something important to tell you. Lily, who had been watching the exchange with keen attention, suddenly spoke up. You served with my daddy, didn't you? The directness of her question silenced the room. Titan, sensing something significant, moved closer to her wheelchair, his body maintaining the alert but non-threatening posture of a service dog, anticipating his handler's needs. Marcus's eyes widened, his gaze truly fixing on Lily's face for the first time. How did you know that? Lily shrugged slightly, a child's gesture at odds with the perceptiveness of her question. You have the same tattoo as Daddy on your arm, the eagle with the flag, and you knew Titan was special, not just a regular dog. Claire looked sharply at Marcus's forearm, where indeed the edge of a tattoo was visible beneath his rolled-up sleeve. The distinctive insignia of the specialized unit Michael had served with during his military service before joining the police force. A chill ran through her as the pieces began to connect. You better sit down, Claire, Captain Brooks said quietly. This is going to be a difficult conversation. Reluctantly, Claire guided Lily's wheelchair to the table, positioning her niece safely between herself and Officer Daniels. Titan settled in his designated spot beside Lily, his attention now divided between his handler and Marcus, who had remained standing, seemingly unable to return to his seat. Michael Bennett was my best friend, Marcus finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. We served 2 tours together. He saved my life in Kandahar when our unit was ambushed. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing visibly. I was with him when he found Titan as a half-starved stray near our compound. We trained him together unofficially at first. Claire's breath caught in her throat. Michael had told her stories about finding a German shepherd puppy, about the bond that had formed between them during his deployment, but he'd never mentioned a friend named Marcus. When we got back stateside, Marcus continued, Michael got Titan officially recognized and certified for police work. I went back for a 3rd tour. That's when his voice cracked, and he looked away, his jaw working as he struggled to maintain composure. Captain Brooks picked up the narrative. Marcus was injured during his 3rd deployment. By the time he returned to the States, Michael had joined our department and established our K9 unit with Titan as his partner. Claire's mind was reeling as she tried to process this new information. Michael never mentioned you, she said to Marcus, unable to keep the accusation from her voice. A flash of pain crossed Marcus's face. We lost touch after my injury. I wasn't in a good place, didn't want to drag anyone down with me. His eyes shifted to Lily, then quickly away as if he couldn't bear to look at her directly. By the time I got my head together enough to reach out, I heard about the accident. It was about Michael and Sarah. His voice dropped even lower. About Lily. The pieces were falling into place with devastating clarity. The man who had harassed them at the cafe, who had deliberately provoked Titan and frightened Lily, was someone from Michael's past. Someone who might have been an uncle to Lily in another lifetime, if circumstances had been different. Why did you approach us like that? Claire demanded, her protective instincts flaring. If you knew who Lily was, why would you behave so aggressively? Marcus shook his head, a gesture of self-disgust rather than denial. I didn't know. Not at first. I recognized Titan immediately. A handler never forgets a dog he's worked with. But it had been years and I'd never met Lily. He looked down at his hands, which were trembling slightly. When she mentioned her dad was a police officer who had passed away, something clicked. But I wasn't thinking clearly. I haven't been thinking clearly for a long time. Captain Brooks leaned forward, his expression grave but compassionate. Marcus has been struggling with severe PTSD since his discharge. He's been in and out of treatment, but the past few months have been particularly difficult for him. That doesn't excuse what happened, Claire said firmly. No, it doesn't. Marcus agreed immediately. There's no excuse. That's why I came in last night. When I got home, when the fog cleared a bit, I realized who Lily must be, Michael's daughter. His voice broke on the name. I couldn't live with myself, knowing what I'd done, what I might have done if it had escalated further. Lily, who had been watching this exchange with solemn attention, suddenly spoke again. Did you train Titan too before Daddy? Marcus looked startled by the question, his gaze finally meeting Lily's directly. Yes, he admitted. Your dad and I both worked with him when he was young. That's why he didn't attack me yesterday, even when I was being inappropriate. He remembered me on some level. Titan remembers everyone who's kind to him. Lily said with the simple certainty of a child. That's what Daddy always said. The conversation might have continued in this vein, painful revelations tempered by Lily's innocent observations, if not for the sudden commotion that erupted in the hallway outside, Ray's voices, the sound of hurried footsteps. And then the community room door burst open to reveal Ray, the youngest of Marcus's companions from the cafe. His face flushed and his expression frantic. Eerie Reeves, we've been looking everywhere for you, he exclaimed, seemingly oblivious to the formal setting or the presence of police officers. Vince is in trouble, man. That guy from the bar last night, the one who was hassling you about Afghanistan, he followed Vince home, and now he's threatening to... He broke off, finally registering the others in the room, his eyes widening as he recognized Lily and Titan. Oh, sorry. Captain Brooks stood, his posture shifting from sympathetic mediator to alert officer. What's this about, a threat? But Ray's attention had fixed on Marcus, whose entire demeanor had changed. Shoulders, straightening eyes sharpening with sudden focus. It's Weaver, Ray explained rapidly. He's at Vince's place with some of his buddies. They've got him cornered in the apartment. Vince called me from the back bathroom, said they've got weapons and they're talking about teaching him a lesson for harboring a traitor. Meaning you, Reeves. The atmosphere in the room transformed instantly. Captain Brooks began issuing orders to Officer Daniels, who moved immediately to the door, hand on his radio. Marcus stood rigid, his expression hardening into something that made Claire instinctively pull Lily's wheelchair back. This is from last night, Marcus asked Ray, his voice tight. The argument at Sullivan's, Ray nodded frantically. The guy was spouting all that garbage about how you guys failed over there, how you should have saved his brother's unit. Vince told him to shut his mouth, and it almost got physical before the bartender broke it up. Marcus turned to Captain Brooks. Weaver's unstable. His brother was KIA in an operation my unit was supposed to provide backup for, but we were pinned down elsewhere. He's been blaming us for years. His eyes darted to Lily and Claire, a decision visibly forming. I need to go. This is my problem, not Vince's. This is a police matter now, Captain Brooks countered. We'll handle it. With all due respect, Captain Weaver won't respond to cops. He's got too much hatred for authority, but he wants me. Marcus's expression was resolute. Let me go with your officers. I can talk him down. A rapid exchange followed, Captain Brooks reluctant, but acknowledging Marcus's insight into the situation. Officer Daniels organizing a response team, and Ray providing details about the layout of Vince's apartment building and the number of men with Weaver. Throughout it all, Claire held tightly to Lily's wheelchair, acutely aware that their family interview had suddenly transformed into the staging ground for a potentially dangerous police intervention. We should go, Claire murmured to Lily, preparing to wheel her toward the door, while everyone was distracted. But as she began to move, a startling bark from Titan froze everyone in the room. The German Shepherd had risen from his position, standing with ears forward and body tense. Lily placed a restraining hand on his back, but her eyes were wide with understanding. Titan knows that man's scent, she announced, pointing to Ray. He was at our cafe yesterday. Titan remembers. It's an interview. Ishant. Marcus looked sharply at Titan, then at Lily. What do you mean he knows his scent? When you were testing Titan, he was checking all the people around us. Lily explained, his nose was working. He does that when he's worried about a threat. He remembers people by their smell. A moment of silence followed this pronouncement, broken by Captain Brooks's thoughtful question. Lily, would Titan be able to help us locate this man, Weaver, if he's moved from the apartment? Service dogs typically aren't used for tracking, but given Titan's police background, Claire began to protest. Titan is Lily's service dog, not a police resource, but she was interrupted by Lily's calm response. Titan can find anyone if he has their scent. Daddy said he was the best tracker in the department. She looked down at the German Shepherd, who remained alert but calm under her hand. But he needs something that smells like the person. Marcus exchanged a significant look with Captain Brooks. Weaver was wearing a distinctive jacket last night, army surplus with patches, if he's still wearing it. And your friend Vince would have something of Weaver's? Captain Brooks asked Ray. I don't know. Maybe they got pretty close during the argument. Weaver spilled his drink on Vince's shirt. He depended. The implications rippled through the room. Titan's specialized training in search and rescue, combined with his police background, might provide a crucial advantage if Weaver and his companions abandoned Vince's apartment before the police arrived. A likely scenario given the escalating situation. Marcus approached Lily, slowly kneeling to bring himself to her eye level, the first time he had directly engaged with her since their tense encounter at the cafe. Lily, he said, his voice gentler than Claire had ever heard it. Titan is your dog. He's trained to stay with you and keep you safe. But we need his help to find a dangerous man who might hurt my friend. Would you be willing to let Titan work with us just for a little while? Lily looked at Marcus thoughtfully, then at Titan, whose attention remained fixed on the adults as if understanding the gravity of the discussion. Titan helps people, she said simply. That's what he was trained for. Daddy would want him to help. Marcus's expression softened, a flash of grief and gratitude crossing his weathered features. Your dad would be very proud of you, Lily. What happened next unfolded with dizzying rapidity. Captain Brooks, recognizing both the potential value of Titan's assistance and the impropriety of separating a child from her service dog, made a decisive judgment call. If Titan was to be deployed, Lily would need to accompany him, but at a safe distance from any potential confrontation. Claire, despite her vehement objections, found herself outmaneuvered by Lily's calm insistence and the urgency of the situation. Within minutes, they were moving toward the parking lot, Captain Brooks and Officer Daniels leading the way, followed by Marcus and Ray under the watchful eye of 2 additional officers, and finally Claire pushing Lily's wheelchair with Titan. Walking alertly at their side, the carefully planned interview had transformed into an impromptu operation, with Lily's service dog potentially playing a crucial role. As they reached the police vehicles, Claire leaned down to whisper urgently in Lily's ear. We don't have to do this. Titan is your dog, your helper. You need him. Lily looked up at her aunt, her young face solemn but determined. But the man who's in trouble was Daddy's friend too. Titan can find bad people and keep everyone safe. She reached up to touch Claire's cheek with small fingers. Don't worry, Aunt Claire, Titan always comes back to me. The convoy of police vehicles moved through Glendale with practiced efficiency, lights flashing but sirens silent, a tactical approach to avoid alerting Weaver and his companions to their imminent arrival. Claire sat in the back of a police SUV, her arm protectively around Lily, who remained calm despite the extraordinary circumstances. Titan lay at their feet in the footwell, his body alert but steady, occasionally lifting his head to look at Lily, as if confirming she remained secure. 2 cars ahead, Marcus rode with Captain Brooks and Officer Daniels, providing additional information about Weaver's background and likely mental state. The pieces of the puzzle had come together rapidly once Ray had burst into the community room. Weaver, the brother of a fallen soldier whose unit Marcus's team had been unable to reach in time during a critical operation, had harbored a festering resentment for years. The chance encounter at Sullivan's Bar the previous night had ignited his rage, particularly when he recognized Marcus, whom he viewed as personally responsible for his brother's death. Vince's apartment is in that complex, Officer Daniels said as they turned onto Cedar Avenue, pointing toward a two-story building of weathered brick, third unit on the second floor, according to dispatch. Captain Brooks nodded, assessing the situation with experienced eyes. No visible disturbance from the street. Neighbors haven't reported anything unusual. He glanced at Marcus. That could mean they've already left, or that Weaver's keeping things quiet until you show up. Marcus's jaw tightened. Weaver's not the type to wait patiently. If Vince called 20 minutes ago and nothing's happened since, he left the implication hanging. They pulled into a parking space across from the apartment complex, the other police vehicles distributing themselves strategically along the block. Claire watched through the window as officers emerged, moving with purpose, but without obvious urgency, maintaining the appearance of routine police activity while positioning themselves for potential intervention. Captain Brooks approached their vehicle, leaning down to speak through the open window. "We're going to bring Titan forward to see if he can confirm whether Weaver is still in the building. Lily will need to handle him since he's trained to respond to her specifically, but you'll stay right here in the vehicle with Officer Reynolds." Lily nodded solemnly, her small face composed despite the tension surrounding her. "Titan needs something with the man's scent. Ray's getting Vince's shirt from last night, the one Weaver spilled his drink on." Captain Brooks replied, "We'll bring it to you." Claire tightened her hold on Lily's shoulders. "This isn't right. Lily's been through enough trauma without being involved in a police operation." Captain Brooks' expression softened with understanding. "I appreciate your concern, Mrs. Bennett. If there were any other option, we wouldn't involve either of you. But time is critical, and Titan's abilities could make the difference in resolving this safely." Before Claire could respond, Ray hurried across the street, a crumpled t-shirt clutched in his hand. "Vince texted me his door code." He reported breathlessly. The shirt was right where he said it would be in his laundry basket. The shirt was brought to Lily, who handled it with surprising composure, allowing Titan to thoroughly sniff the garment. The German Shepherd's demeanor shifted immediately, his body language transforming from a patient service dog to a working canine nose, actively processing information years forward with concentration. He remembers his training. Officer Reynolds remarked from the driver's seat, watching Titan with professional appreciation. "Those skills never really leave them," Captain Brooks agreed. Lily stroked Titan's head gently. "He knows this is important. He can tell by how everyone's acting." Her child's perception cut to the heart of the situation with startling clarity. Captain Brooks conferred briefly with his officers, then returned to their vehicle. "We're going to do a controlled approach. Titan will work on a long lead with Lily directing him from the vehicle. If he indicates Weaver's presence, we'll move in. If not, we'll check the apartment directly." The plan proceeded with methodical precision. Lily was positioned at the open door of the SUV wheelchair, secured with Titan on a 20-foot lead handled by Officer Daniels. At Lily's quiet command, Titan Seek, the German Shepherd, moved forward with purpose, nose working systematically as he circled the ground floor of the apartment building, then ascended the exterior stairs to the second-floor walkway. Claire watched with her heart in her throat as Titan moved along the row of apartments, his body language shifting subtly as he approached Vince's unit. He paused, nose twitching, then continued past the door to the very end of the walkway, where a fire escape connected to a small landing. "He's got something," Officer Daniels reported into his radio. "Not at the apartment door at the fire escape." Titan had stopped at the fire escape landing, his posture rigid with alertness. Nose pointed downward toward the alley below. Officer Daniels moved cautiously to peer over the railing, then spoke rapidly into his radio. "Movement in the alley behind the building. 3 individuals moving toward a parked van. One appears to be restrained." The situation escalated instantly. Captain Brooks issued rapid commands, officers moving with coordinated efficiency to surround the alley. Marcus, despite instructions to remain in the police vehicle, had emerged and was moving purposefully toward the back of the building, his expression set with grim determination. "Stay here," Officer Reynolds instructed Claire and Lily firmly. "Do not leave this vehicle under any circumstances." He secured the SUV before moving to join his colleagues, leaving them watching through the windows as the confrontation unfolded just out of sight. What happened next would later be pieced together from multiple perspectives. The officer reports Vince's testimony and Marcus's reluctant account. Weaver and two companions had indeed been inside Vince's apartment, but the arrival of police vehicles had prompted them to attempt a hasty escape via the fire escape, dragging Vince with them as both hostage and bait to draw Marcus into a confrontation. They had nearly reached their van when the police converged on the alley, creating a volatile standoff. Vince, his face bloodied from what was later determined to be a broken nose, was held at knife point by one of Weaver's companions, while Weaver himself brandished what appeared to be a handgun. Reeves Weaver shouted, his voice carrying across the parking lot to where Claire and Lily sat in tense silence. "I know you're here! Come face me, you coward!" The officers established a perimeter, weapons drawn but held with disciplined restraint. Captain Brooks attempted to de-escalate his trained negotiator's voice, carrying clearly, "Mr. Weaver, please put down your weapon. We can resolve this without anyone getting hurt." But Weaver was beyond reasoning, his movements erratic, his eyes wild with a combination of rage and what would later be confirmed as intoxication. "Send Reeves out here. He's the one who needs to answer for what happened." And then, despite the officer's commands to stand down, Marcus stepped into the alley, his hands raised. "I'm here, Weaver. Let Vince go. This is between you and me." Claire couldn't see what was happening, but she could hear the escalating confrontation. Marcus's measured attempts to reason with Weaver. Weaver's increasingly incoherent accusations. The police officers' continued efforts to defuse the situation. Lily sat beside her, unnaturally still, her small hands clasped tightly in her lap. Then, without warning, Titan barked sharply and lunged against his lead with such force that Officer Daniels momentarily lost his grip. The German Shepherd bolted racing down the walkway and descending the stairs with remarkable speed. Lily cried out, her composure finally breaking. "I thought Titan stay," but the command came too late. Titan was already sprinting toward the alley, responding to some stimulus that only he had detected. Perhaps a shift in the confrontation, a sound of distress, or the scent of imminent violence that his specialized training had taught him to recognize. What followed was a cacophony of shouts, a single gunshot that echoed between the buildings, and then an eerie moment of silence before the alley erupted into frantic activity. Claire held Lily tightly as they waited in agonizing uncertainty, unable to see what had transpired, but fearing the worst. Minutes stretched like hours before. Captain Brooks finally approached their vehicle, his expression grave. "The situation is under control?" He reported. "Weaver and his associates are in custody. Vince is being treated by paramedics, but his injuries aren't life-threatening." "And Titan?" Lily asked, her voice small but steady. "Where's Titan?" Captain Brooks's hesitation told Claire everything before he even spoke. "Titan intervened when Weaver aimed his weapon at Marcus. He was hit." Lily's face drained of color, her small body going rigid in Claire's embrace. Is he dead?" "No," Captain Brooks assured her quickly, "but he's been seriously injured." The bullet struck his shoulder. "The officers are transporting him to the emergency veterinary hospital right now. Marcus is with him." The world seemed to tilt beneath Claire as she struggled to process what had happened. In the space of a single morning, they had gone from a routine police interview to a hostage situation, and now Titan, Lily's beloved companion, her medical necessity, her most faithful friend, was fighting for his life because he had done what he was trained to do: protect. Lily's reaction was not what Claire expected. There were no tears, no hysterics, only a quiet, terrible composure as she asked, "Can you take us to him? Titan needs me when he's scared." The drive to the veterinary hospital passed in a blur of silent prayer and gut-wrenching fear. Claire held Lily's hand tightly, feeling the slight tremors that betrayed her niece's carefully maintained calm. Captain Brooks had arranged for them to be escorted, directly providing periodic updates from the veterinary staff, who were already working on Titan when they arrived. As they pulled into the parking lot of Glendale Veterinary Emergency Center, Claire finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind. Why did Titan run toward the danger? He's not a police dog anymore. He's supposed to stay with Lily. Fun. Captain Brooks glanced back at them, his expression somber. According to Marcus, Titan didn't attack Weaver. He positioned himself between Weaver and Marcus just as Weaver raised his weapon. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Marcus believes Titan recognized what was happening from his police training. He was protecting someone he perceived as part of his pack. Lily looked up at this, her blue eyes wide with understanding that seemed far beyond her years. He did what Daddy would have wanted, she said quietly. Daddy always said we protect the people we love, no matter what. The waiting room of Glendale Veterinary Emergency Center was a sterile space of uncomfortable chairs and outdated magazines designed for function rather than comfort. Claire sat rigidly beside Lily's wheelchair, the minutes crawling by as they waited for news about Titan's condition. The initial report had been cautiously optimistic. The bullet had struck Titan's shoulder rather than his chest or vital organs, causing significant blood loss and tissue damage. The veterinary surgeon had immediately taken him into surgery, promising updates as soon as possible. Marcus Reeves sat across from them, his large frame awkwardly contained in a chair designed for people of average height. His hands were clasped between his knees, head bowed, the picture of a man consumed by guilt. He had arrived at the hospital ahead of them, having accompanied Titan in the police vehicle that served as an improvised ambulance. His leather jacket was stained with dark patches that Claire recognized with a chill as Titan's blood. I never meant for any of this to happen, Marcus said, breaking the tense silence. His voice was rough with emotion. Titan saved my life back there. Weaver had a clear shot at my chest. If Titan hadn't jumped in, he trailed off, unable to complete the sentence. Claire's response was cold, her protective instincts for Lily overriding any sympathy she might have felt. None of this would have happened if you hadn't harassed Lily and Titan at the cafe yesterday. Your actions set everything in motion. Marcus nodded, accepting the accusation without defense. You're right, I was in a bad place. Have been for a long, long time. He lifted his head, revealing eyes red from what might have been tears. I didn't recognize Lily yesterday. I swear I didn't. I just saw Titan and something broke inside me. Seeing him again brought everything back. Afghanistan. Michael, the life I used to have before everything went to hell. Lily, who had been silent since their arrival, suddenly spoke. You were the friend Daddy wrote to me about in his letters, the one who taught him how to train dogs. Ashorn, Tonsvarnreinen. Marcus's head snapped up, surprise evident in his expression. Michael wrote to you about me. Lily nodded, her small face solemn. When he was away, he wrote me letters. Mommy would read them to me. He said his friend Marcus knew more about dogs than anyone in the world, and that someday he would introduce us. She paused, her young voice steady despite the weight of her words. But then he died and I never got to meet you. The simplicity of Lily's statement landed like a physical blow, visibly staggering. Marcus Claire watched as the realization dawned across his face. The recognition that Michael had valued their friendship enough to tell his daughter about him, had planned for them to meet under vastly different circumstances than their confrontation at the cafe. I didn't know, Marcus whispered. After my last deployment, I cut ties with everyone. The doctors called it isolation behavior. Part of the PTSD, I couldn't deal with normal life with people who hadn't seen what I'd seen. His voice cracked. Michael tried to reach out a few times, but I shut him out. I was angry that he seemed to have adjusted so well. Police career, family, the whole American dream. Meanwhile, I couldn't sleep through the night without nightmares or hold down a job for more than a few months. A nurse entered the waiting room, momentarily interrupting the conversation. She approached them with a clipboard, requesting additional information about Titan's medical history and vaccination records. Claire provided what she could, grateful for the distraction from the heavy emotions filling the small space. After the nurse departed, promising an update from the veterinarian, soon Marcus continued, his voice lower, directed primarily at Lily. Your dad was the best man I ever knew. We met in basic training, became friends when we discovered we both loved working with dogs in Afghanistan. We volunteered for every K9 project. They had bomb detection, search and rescue patrol duties. Lily leaned forward in her wheelchair, her attention completely focused on Marcus's words. Daddy said Titan was special from the beginning. Lily said, her eyes fixed on Marcus. He was... Marcus affirmed, a ghost of a smile touching his lips for the first time. Just a scrawny pup. When we found him, half-starved and hiding under our barracks, Michael started sneaking him food and I taught him basic commands. By the time our deployment ended, he was following us everywhere, already showing the intelligence that made him such an exceptional service dog. Claire watched Lily's face as Marcus spoke, seeing the hunger in her expression, the desperate need of a child to hear stories about a father taken too soon, to connect with someone who had known him in ways she never would. Despite her lingering anger at Marcus, Claire couldn't deny Lily this unexpected connection to Michael's past. The explosion that injured me was supposed to get both of us. Marcus continued, his eyes now fixed on a point somewhere beyond the waiting room walls. We were on patrol with our unit. Titan was with us not officially, but he'd become our unofficial mascot and rudimentary bomb detector. He alerted, suddenly started barking and trying to push us back. Marcus's voice grew tight. I thought he was just being skittish. Michael listened to him. He always trusted Titan's instincts more than I did. The IED was buried deeper than usual. Titan sensed it, but our equipment didn't pick it up. It detonated when I was just at the edge of the kill zone. Michael had hung back, still trusting Titan's warning. Lily's small voice cut through the tension. That's why you got hurt and Daddy didn't. Marcus nodded, meeting her gaze directly for the first time. Your dad saved my life that day. Lily, because he trusted a dog's instincts over human technology. When I finally got back stateside after rehab, he had already arranged for Titan to be officially trained and certified. He told me it was the least he could do to honor what Titan had tried to do for us in Afghanistan. Claire felt as though the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. All this time, she had believed that Michael had simply found Titan through his police connections, had selected him as a K9 partner because of his exceptional abilities. She had never known that the dog had been with Michael in Afghanistan, had tried to warn them of the danger that had ultimately led to Marcus's injuries. Why didn't Michael ever tell us this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus shrugged, a gesture of resignation. Michael protected people not just physically but emotionally. He probably didn't want to burden you with the darker parts of his deployment, and after I pushed him away, refused his help. When I got back, maybe he thought it was better to leave that chapter closed. The conversation might have continued in this vein, each revelation peeling back another layer of Michael's past that Claire had never known, if not for the appearance of the veterinary surgeon at the waiting room door. Dr. Lynn's surgical mask hung around her neck, her expression carefully neutral in the way of medical professionals delivering uncertain news. Lily Bennett's family, she inquired, approaching them with measured steps. Claire and Lily both tensed while Marcus rose from his chair, his height making him tower over the petite surgeon. How is he? Marcus asked the question, bursting from him before Claire could speak. Dr. Lynn glanced between them, quickly assessing the dynamics. The surgery was successful. She began directing her words primarily to Lily. The bullet damaged muscle tissue and cracked his scapula, the shoulder blade, but missed major blood vessels and nerves. We've repaired the damage and stabilized the fracture. Titan is strong and healthy, which gives him excellent odds for recovery. The collective release of tension was almost audible. Claire felt tears spring to her eyes, surprising her with their intensity. Lily reached for her hand, squeezing it with surprising strength. When can I see him? Lily asked, her voice steadier than Claire's would have been. He's in recovery now, Dr. Lynn explained, still under anesthesia, but responding well. Once he's awake and stable, we'll bring you back to see him briefly. However, she continued, her expression turning serious, Titan's recovery will require significant rehabilitation. He won't be able to perform his service dog duties for at least 8 to 12 weeks, possibly longer, depending on how the healing progresses. The implication struck Claire with the force of a physical blow. Titan wasn't just Lily's companion. He was essential to her daily functioning, helping with transfers, retrieving items beyond her reach, providing the physical support that allowed her a measure of independence despite her paralysis. Even more critically, he was trained to recognize the early signs of autonomic dysreflexia, a potentially life-threatening complication of spinal cord injuries that Lily had experienced twice since the accident. "But I need Titan," Lily said, giving voice to Claire's concerns. For the first time since the confrontation at the cafe, her composure cracked her lower lip, trembling slightly. "How will I manage without him?" Before Claire could respond with reassurance, she didn't fully believe Marcus stepped forward, dropping to one knee beside Lily's wheelchair to bring himself to her eye level. "Lily, I know I'm the last person who has any right to offer help, but I trained military service dogs for years. I could help with Titan's rehabilitation, and in the meantime, I could fill in for some of his duties." The offer hung in the air, as unexpected as it was complicated. Claire stared at Marcus, trying to reconcile the aggressive man from the cafe with this broken soldier kneeling before her niece, offering assistance that seemed both presumptuous and desperately needed. "You would do that?" Lily asked, her voice small but hopeful. Marcus nodded, his expression grave with sincerity. "It's the least I can do. Titan took a bullet meant for me." "And your dad," his voice faltered, "your dad would have wanted me to step up, to finally be the friend he thought I was." Claire opened her mouth to refuse to say they would manage somehow, that they didn't need help from the very man whose actions had caused this crisis. But before she could speak, Dr. Lin interjected with gentle professionalism. "Actually, having someone with service dog training experience would be extremely beneficial for Titan's recovery. The rehabilitation process is specialized particularly for working dogs who need to return to specific duties." She looked at Marcus with new interest. "You have formal training in this area?" 4 years with the military K9 program," Marcus confirmed. "And I helped Michael with Titan's initial training before he entered the police program." This new information shifted the dynamic yet again. Claire felt her resistance wavering in the face of practical necessity. Lily needed support that Claire couldn't provide alone, and Titan needed specialized rehabilitation beyond what a typical veterinary practice might offer. Lily, with the directness that had characterized her approach to life since the accident, addressed the tension directly. "Aunt Claire, I think Daddy would want us to accept help from his friend." She looked at Marcus with those old soul eyes that had unnerved Claire from the first days of her guardianship. "But you have to promise not to be scary anymore. Titan doesn't like it when people are loud and angry." The simplicity of the condition, delivered with a child's straightforward logic, seemed to pierce straight through Marcus's defenses. He bowed his head for a moment, then met Lily's gaze with newfound steadiness. "I promise, Lily. No more angry outbursts. I've been avoiding dealing with my problems for too long, using anger to push people away." He glanced at Claire. "I've been in and out of VA treatment programs, but I never committed fully. That changes now. I'll get the help I need while helping you and Titan." The third revelation came as they were finally allowed to visit Titan in recovery. The German Shepherd lay on a padded table, his shoulder heavily bandaged, an IV line delivering fluids and medication. Despite the sedation, his tail thumped weakly against the table when he heard Lily's voice, his eyes struggling to focus on her familiar form. As Lily stroked his head with gentle fingers, whispering reassurances that seemed more suited to a parent comforting a child than a child comforting her dog. Marcus stood at a respectful distance, watching the interaction with a complex expression. "There's something else you should know," he said quietly to Claire. "Something Michael made me promise if anything ever happened to him." He reached into his jacket pocket, withdrawing a folded paper that showed signs of having been carried for a long time. "Before my last deployment, when Michael knew I was struggling, he gave me this. Said if I ever got my head straight, I should read it. I finally did last night after I recognized Lily at the cafe." Claire accepted the paper with trembling fingers, unfolding it to reveal Michael's familiar handwriting. The same neat, precise script that had filled birthday cards and Christmas notes throughout their shared childhood. "Dear Marcus," it began. "If you're reading this, it means you finally decided to rejoin the land of the living, and I couldn't be happier. The letter continued for several pages, Michael's voice reaching out from the past with the warmth and wisdom that had characterized him in life. He wrote of his concerns for Marcus's isolation, his hope that his friend would find his way back from the darkness that had claimed him after his injury. But most strikingly, he wrote of Lily, of his hopes for his daughter's future, and his wish that the two people he cared about most might someday know each other. If something ever happens to me, Michael had written, and if life takes the kind of unexpected turn that none of us can predict, I want you to know that I would trust you with my daughter's well-being. Not as her guardian, Claire will handle that part beautifully, but as someone who understands the parts of me that civilian life never saw, someone who can tell her stories about her dad that no one else knows, someone who shares our special connection to Titan. Claire folded the letter carefully when she finished reading, her emotions too complex to immediately process. Michael had anticipated this connection, had wanted it even as Claire found herself struggling to accept the volatile broken man before her as someone her brother had valued so deeply. "I'll need time," she said, finally, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "This is a lot to take in." Marcus nodded, no hint of impatience or entitlement in his expression. "I understand. I'll prove myself worthy of Michael's trust, and yours, one day at a time." 1 week after Titan's injury, the Rosewood Cafe welcomed back its youngest regular patron with a special table decorated with balloons and a hand-lettered sign reading, "Welcome back, Lily and friends." The German Shepherd himself was not present, still recuperating at the veterinary hospital, but his absence was palpably felt as Claire guided Lily's wheelchair to their usual corner table. Several patrons approached to offer well wishes, many having heard about Titan's heroism through local news coverage of the incident. The usual Claire. Elaine asked, coffee pot already in hand, as she greeted them with warm familiarity. "Yes, please," Claire replied, arranging napkins and utensils with the practiced efficiency of a caregiver, "and perhaps a hot chocolate for our guest when he arrives." As if summoned by her words, the cafe door opened to admit Marcus Reeves, so transformed from his previous appearance that several patrons did a double take. Gone was the intimidating leather jacket and unkempt stubble. In their place was a clean-shaven face, neatly trimmed hair, and a simple button-down shirt that lent him a surprisingly professional air. Most striking, however, was the way he carried himself. Shoulders squared rather than hunched, steps measured rather than aggressive. His entire demeanor suggesting a man who had found some measure of peace. "Sorry I'm late," he said as he approached their table, a small gift bag dangling from one hand. The VA counselor had some additional resources he wanted to share. He smiled at Lily, a genuine expression that softened his weathered features. "How are you doing, kiddo?" "I miss Titan," Lily replied, simply accepting the gift bag with careful hands. "But Dr. Lin says I can visit him again tomorrow if his fever stays down." Marcus nodded, taking the seat across from her. "That's good news. The antibiotics are working then." He watched as Lily opened the gift bag, withdrawing a small, expertly carved wooden figure of a German Shepherd. Lily's face lit up as she examined the wooden figure, her fingers tracing the careful details that captured Titan's alert expression and dignified posture with remarkable accuracy. "Did you make this?" she asked, looking up at Marcus with genuine wonder. "I did," Marcus confirmed. "Wood carving's been part of my therapy for a while now. Keeps my hands busy and my mind focused." He glanced at Claire, including her in the conversation. "I thought Lily might like having a version of Titan she could keep with her until the real thing comes home." Claire observed the interaction with cautious optimism. The week since Titan's injury had been filled with remarkable changes, not only in Marcus, who had immersed himself in an intensive PTSD treatment program at the VA while still making time to visit Titan daily and provide updates to Lily, but in their entire family dynamic. Michael's letter, which Claire had read and reread until its creases threatened to tear, had revealed a depth to her brother's friendship with Marcus that she had never suspected. "If something happens to me," Michael had written, "and if Lily ever needs more than Claire can provide alone, you're the one I'd trust, Marcus. You understand service dogs better than anyone I know, And despite what you believe about yourself, you've got more heart and courage than most. Don't let what happened overseas define who you are forever. The brother I knew is still in there, and my daughter would be lucky to have you in her life. The prophecy of those words had proven uncannily accurate. In Titan's absence, Marcus had stepped in to assist with the practical challenges of Lily's daily care, accompanying them to medical appointments, helping with the specialized transfer techniques that Titan had been trained to support, and working with Lily's physical therapist to maintain her exercise routine without her four-legged assistant. I spoke with Dr. Lin this morning. Marcus said accepting the hot chocolate Elaine placed before him. She thinks Titan might be ready for home care in another week, though his rehabilitation will take longer. I've been researching adaptive harnesses that would let him support you without putting weight on his injured shoulder. Lily's face brightened at this news. Can we adapt his service vest too so he can still wear it even while he's healing? Absolutely, Marcus assured her. And I've been in touch with canine companions about a temporary service dog while Titan completes his recovery. They have a retired police dog named Maverick who's already trained in mobility assistance. He could fill in for a few months without disrupting Titan's position in your life. Claire found herself continually surprised by Marcus's thoroughness, his genuine commitment to ensuring Lily's needs were met during Titan's recovery. It was as if helping them had given him a purpose that had been lacking in his life since his discharge, a way to honor his friendship with Michael while moving forward from the trauma that had derailed his life. The cafe door opened again, admitting Vince, his nose still bandaged from the confrontation with Weaver, but his smile genuine as he spotted them. Since the incident, he had become a regular presence in their lives as well, his steady calm providing a counterbalance to Marcus's more intense energy. He approached their table exchanging greetings before taking the fourth chair. "I've got some news," he announced, directing his words primarily to Marcus. The DA called this morning. Weaver's accepted a plea deal, aggravated assault and unlawful detention. With his prior record, he's looking at significant time. He hesitated, then added, "They're recommending psychological evaluation and treatment as part of his sentence." Marcus nodded, his expression sobering. Good Weaver needs help as much as consequences. He met Vince's gaze with newfound steadiness. We all carry scars from what happened over there. Some just run deeper than others. As the adults continued their conversation, Lily turned her attention to the wooden carving of Titan, her fingers tracing its contours with evident affection. Claire watched her niece, noting the subtle changes in her demeanor over the past week. A new confidence emerging despite the temporary loss of her service dog, a resilience that seemed to grow stronger rather than weaker in the face of adversity. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Glendale Park played host to an unusual gathering beneath the shelter of an oak tree whose leaves had turned brilliant gold. A small crowd assembled around a picnic table, specially adapted for wheelchair access. Lily sat at its center, flanked by Claire on one side and Marcus on the other, Titan lying in perfect service position beside her wheelchair. The German Shepherd's recovery had progressed remarkably well under Marcus's dedicated rehabilitation program. The specialized harness Marcus had designed allowed Titan to perform most of his service duties without straining his healing shoulder, and the visible scar in his fur had become a badge of honor, evidence of his unwavering loyalty and courage. "I think that's everyone," Claire said, surveying the gathering with satisfaction. The group included many who had become part of their expanded family circle. Vince and his girlfriend, Jenny Officer Daniels, and Captain Brooks, Dr. Lin, from the veterinary hospital, Lily's physical therapist, and even Elaine from Rosewood Cafe, who had brought a specially decorated cake for the occasion. "Then I think it's time," Marcus replied, reaching into his pocket to withdraw a small velvet box. He presented it to Lily with a ceremonial flourish. "The honor should be yours." Lily opened the box to reveal a polished service medallion engraved with Titan's name and the simple inscription, "For valor beyond duty." With Marcus's help, she attached it to Titan's service vest just above the patch that identified him as a service dog. "Someone right, this is a special day," Marcus announced to the gathered friends, his voice carrying the comfortable authority of a man who had found his place in the world. 6 months ago, Titan reminded us all what it means to protect those we care about without hesitation and without counting the cost. He rested his hand lightly on Lily's shoulder. But what we're really celebrating today is family. Not just the one we're born into, but the one we build around us when life takes unexpected turns. As if understanding the significance of the moment, Titan lifted his head, his intelligent eyes moving between Lily and Marcus, before settling on Claire, with that uncanny awareness that had always been his hallmark. In that gaze, Claire saw not just the exceptional service dog who had become essential to Lily's independence, but the living connection to her brother, a thread of continuity in a life that had been irreversibly altered by tragedy. To Titan, Captain Brooks proposed raising his cup in a toast that was echoed around the table. And to found family, as the autumn sunlight filtered through golden leaves above them, Claire watched Marcus kneeling to Lily's level, helping her adjust Titan's harness with the patient expertise that had become his contribution to their lives. The journey from that tense confrontation at the cafe to this moment of celebration had been neither straightforward nor easy, but it had led them to a place Michael might have envisioned when he wrote his prescient letter. A new kind of family forged through shared pain and healing, united by the extraordinary bond between a child and her service dog, who had in their own way saved them all. 2 years after Titan's injury, Lily Bennett sat in her wheelchair at the edge of the elementary school playground, watching her classmates navigate the jungle gym with the careful detachment she had mastered since the accident. Beside her, Titan maintained his vigilant position, his graying muzzle the only visible sign of the passing years. His injured shoulder had healed completely, though on cold mornings, he sometimes favored his right side. A small reminder of his sacrifice that Lily noticed but never mentioned. "Hey, Lily," called a voice from across the playground. "Want to try the new adaptive swing? Mr. Reeves finished installing it yesterday." Lily smiled, her face lighting with genuine excitement as she wheeled herself toward the special swing designed to accommodate her wheelchair. Marcus Reeves, now officially employed as the school's maintenance supervisor and unofficial service dog liaison, waited beside the equipment, his weathered face creasing with pleasure at her approach. All tested and ready to go, he confirmed, helping her position the wheelchair on the platform. "Titan stand," he commanded, and the German Shepherd moved to his designated spot where he could watch Lily without interfering with the swing's movement. As Marcus gently pushed the swing into motion, Lily's laughter floated across the playground, the unburdened sound of a child experiencing simple joy. From the school entrance, Claire watched the scene with a quiet smile, her heart full with the knowledge that out of tragedy had emerged an unexpected blessing. A guardian who had once been broken, finding healing through protecting a child who had once been shattered. Both of them made whole through the unwavering devotion of a dog who had always known exactly where he belonged. In the shadow of loss, they had found not replacement for what was taken, but something new and equally precious. A family bound not by blood, but by choice, by shared experience, and by the understanding that sometimes the deepest wounds become the strongest connections. And at the center of it all, a German Shepherd with intelligent eyes and unfailing loyalty, who had once been saved by a soldier in a distant desert and who had returned that gift 1,000 times over by saving not just lives, but hearts. In the quiet spaces of our later years, we often reflect on what truly matters, the bonds we forge, the challenges we overcome, and the unexpected ways we find healing. This story reminds us that sometimes our deepest wounds, whether visible like Lily's paralysis or invisible like Marcus's PTSD, can become bridges to connection rather than barriers. It speaks to the wisdom that comes with age, that family isn't always defined by blood, but by those who show up when we need them most. For those of us who have experienced loss, watched loved ones struggle, or felt the weight of our own limitations, Titan's unwavering loyalty offers a powerful reminder that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the gentle persistence of showing up day after day. As we navigate life's journey, may we recognize that it's never too late to heal old wounds, forge new connections, or become the person someone else needs us to be.